You have an individual placed with you, essentially my boss, who's Brandon, who's been phenomenal to work with. He works aligned with me from the aspect of crawl before you walk. I know that, we're changing policies even while we're integrating policies. So if you throw the book at them, they will walk. And we have a tremendous team behind Huncilman. I take pride in that, and it's a portion of the business that I coddle. So implementation is, key to that, and just doing it in small increments and increments to where they see a benefit from it.
Welcome to Making Sparks, the podcast where we ignite your passion for metal fabrication and fuel your business success. Join industry leaders and dive deep into the world of metalworking. From business insights to tips of the trade, Making Sparks is your forge of knowledge. During each episode, discover success stories, innovative solutions, and expert interviews that light the path to business growth. Subscribe today and grow and improve your company, and let's make sparks fly together.
Welcome back to Making Sparks. I'm your host, Casey Velker, sitting here with my co-host, Matthew Nix, on a part 2 episode with Parker Huncilman. We're talking about mergers. We teased it on the previous episode. Listen to the first episode if you haven't, because there's actually a lot of
great stuff.
Yeah, a lot of good knowledge about the anticipation and the preparation of merging before. So we basically think about it as part 1 is before a merger, part 2 is after.
Yeah, Parker shared a lot of great stuff on part 1 about just his family's journey. Also, a quick history about his family. And if you haven't listened to part 1, they are 5th generation family business, and Nick's is 5th generation family business. We, of course, joined forces, and we're sharing that story. But he tells more about their history and their story on part 1, and then their journey, which was about a 2.5-year process of getting ready to take the business to market, and then taking it to market, and then eventually the transaction with Nick's company. So that's part 1. And in part 2, we're going to jump in and talk about everything from the post acquisition. So from the day it might be kind of fun to let's do like the week leading up to signing the papers, and then from then on, because there's a lot of drama in that last week always.
Oh yeah.
What was that like, that last week?
The last week was, I remember it well. I think Matthew had sent me a text at one point, I think the weekend before, and you're like, hey, we're going to be hanging out by the pool. This, I've got good vibes about all this. Hope everything's going well on your end. I'm like, you're hanging out by the pool. I'm over here shaking in my boots, no, the last week was, even just before that, when you go through your, due diligence and all that, that's when it really becomes real. And, that all progresses to that last week. And,
there's always hiccups in due diligence that come up along the way, no fault of anyone's, that usually in those last few weeks, it gets really tense working through.
It becomes a scramble. And then, you start to look at it from the standpoint of, is this going to, make the deck of cards crumble? And, so it comes down to a few decisions and a few, things that you have to, dive into quickly to be able to make the deal come to the signing table, essentially. So yeah, it's a very chaotic week. It's an emotional week. Everything that you could imagine as far as, starting to, literally it comes down to signing the paperwork for a new chapter in the life of a business.
And a lot of the drama on our side, Parker's intentionally kept out of. So yes, on that particular day, I was sitting by the pool, and I wanted to put on a front to him that everything's all good. But what he doesn't know is, probably the day before, I don't remember which day. Well, I know it was on a Sunday, but I'm at my hunting property with my boys. It's summertime. We're trying to enjoy a Sunday and putting food out and checking trail cameras. And that turned into my brother-in-law having to drive the Polaris Ranger, because I spent my entire day on Sunday, or entire afternoon, on the phone with our CFO, their broker, 2 lawyers, and just having this, forgive my language, complete shit show of a probably 2-hour marathon call. And it was right in that like week leading up, and this due diligence stuff that's boiled to the surface, and like the conversation gets heated, and there's a lot of emotions, and
you got everything you wanted, so you deserve it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, like any good negotiation, we both gave gave a little for sure. But yeah, it gets tense.
Yeah, in fact, to go to, say, day of, ground zero, here it is, this new business. And, I thought it would be this, rainbows and unicorns, birds tweeting, sign the paperwork. But no, it's not. I mean, there's per se a new sheriff in town. There's a new group of people on site. Nobody, and that was probably the hardest part for me, was keeping quiet about it. I like to pride myself on I'm an honest person, and not that you're lying to your employees, but for the deal and for the succession of the business, you have to honor keeping your lips shut. So that day it's a major step, and it wasn't DocuSign all the advancements and documents today. It's kind of a quiet process, and it happens in the background. And in fact, the day after, I had to sit down and calm myself down and go back and look at the documents to make sure I signed everything. It's like the last thing I wanted to do is leave an open window by just making a mistake. So there's a lot of activity.
It's not like ringing the bell on the stock market now.
Absolutely not. No.
No, I mean, yeah, our equivalent of that didn't happen until, I don't know if it was that night or a night or two later. We all went out to a very nice dinner downtown Louisville, and their family and our family and key leadership. And you're able to break bread and kind of just take a deep breath and celebrate. But that's after you've already made all the announcements and done all, like you said, the first day is just chaos.
Right. Yeah. You're trying to migrate, and we've got 50, almost 60 employees. Migrating that workforce to a new entity it's a mountain, and you all hadn't had experience at that level with that volume of people.
And 2 shifts and a pretty large contingent of Spanish speaking folks.
Yep.
So these were all new things for us to navigate.
Yeah. And me as well. I mean, obviously I could operate with them, obviously, but transitioning them and giving all the understanding, giving the points of understanding, just all the demographics of all of our employees, and really giving them why this is happening as an answer to each individual employee it was overwhelming at times.
Hey guys, it's Nick from Making Chips. I want to give you 3 quick reasons why you should check out Mike Payne's podcast, By the Numbers. Mike, my good buddy, my partner on Making Chips, is full of wisdom. He's full of experience. He's full of what it takes to buy, sell, and lead a business, specifically a manufacturing business. So all the numbers that you should be focused on to improve your performance, that's what he's the master at. The second reason, Mike's the first person I call. If I'm looking at a new idea, a new partnership opportunity, a new acquisition, any new initiative where I need to dive into the numbers and figure out how to approach it, Mike is who I go to. And third, you got to love that buttery Tulsa King voice that Mike rocks. It just soothes your soul. It gives you the confidence to elevate your leadership. Jokes aside, if you love making chips, or if you're just passionate about improving your business performance and the financial performance of your company, check out By the Numbers by Making Chips, hosted by my good buddy, Mike Payne.
What was that like? Do you have any tips for telling your employees that, hey, we just been acquired, we just merged with someone? Because I feel like that's got to be the hardest. I know we had Jim Stratman on a previous episode, and he talked about that. He basically said, because he was one of those ones who he reinvested into the new company, and he's like, I'm in it too, guys. We're ready to keep going. I know that's one way to help ease the shock. It can be pain. It can be shock.
Parker being a part of it was certainly, I think, ease the shock, the fear, probably the fear.
Yeah, absolutely.
The most.
I mean, it came down to one conversation in our shop with all the employees surrounding my dad and my uncle, basically reading them a letter that said, we're retiring, and then it was a big gasp. And then it said, just, basically calm down, because, Parker is going to be a player in this. We're going to continue it as, like a family business, just, under a new umbrella. And then we got into the details of what they were going to see and the changes that would happen. And, that's where I think there was some learning curve for both of us there. When we were started to meet with employees one-on-one, that was where it transpires to, okay, this is what all the way down to what they were making prior to, what they're going to make now. Number one is there was a lot of questions on if they were going to be retained. And we were clear with them from the start that, nothing's changing as far as employment goes. And Matthew was clear with me before this that they're not somebody to come in and just start chopping heads. I mean, we change the structure and the deal, and we progress and grow the company. That is number one on the list. So sitting down with each individual person, every situation was different. That some voiced concerns, some were happy. I will say from a positive attribute or a positive portion of it was a lot of them saw improved benefits right there at the table, which was phenomenal. And I had a number of people come up to me and literally say, thank you. So that was the best part,
Well, and they saw that the company was getting somewhat stagnant, which isn't it's not a knock at your father and uncle. It's just, I think that's very natural. When you start a business, you're really aggressive and you take a lot of risks. You have to. And as you progress and the company matures and you get later in your life, you naturally get more and more risk averse. A lot of that I think is very healthy. It's appropriate, but people tend to at later in life tip it too far the other way to where you get ultra conservative and you end up holding the business back. I mean, I watched that with my own father. You have commented about that, and they were starting to hold it back a little bit.
I couldn't have said it better. I mean, I've rode a couple of the waves with them that were massive highs and massive lows. So the respect I have for them over the course of their careers is enormous.
Yeah, and to come through those big downturns they came through and to come out the other side, it's only natural to get more conservative. Right. I mean, that's probably what you would do if you go through that.
You said that they, like, one of the big questions was like, are they going to be retained? How much are you going to get paid and stuff like that. Me being the guy that I am, my wife's going to hate me saying this, but I would have cracked a joke right there and be like, well, we lost our 2 highest paid employees. You guys are fine.
There was a warning put out. There was a flag put up, and Matthew told it to me. And I heard it from several other business owners before, and they said, just hold your horses and don't be surprised when after you do this, somebody will walk away that you would not expect. And that luckily that only happened with 2 individuals that I can think of. So that didn't hurt as bad as I thought it would, but it absolutely happened.
Yeah, I could see that. It's just, it's kind of like when, if you run a business that isn't doing so well, and but the people liked working with each other, and then one employee leaves, multiple people leave. It's kind of like that in the sense of like, okay, it changes. Like, oh, this isn't what I signed up.
The dynamic changes.
No, I didn't sign up to work with Nick's. I signed up to work with Huncilman.
Yep.
So I could see why that probably happens almost in every single merger.
Yeah.
So.
I do want to say I was very blessed to be able to be in the room when his dad spoke to everybody. I've never, again, we've acquired 8 companies. I've never had the opportunity to do that. Normally, we always honor what the outgoing owners want. Of course, normally they want to speak in private to their team, or not in private, but without us. And then they ask us to comment as soon as the conversation is over. So it's kind of like, boom, here we are, and
drum roll, please.
Yeah. So anyway, and we've learned a lot along the way. We still have a lot to learn, but we've learned some of what not to do. But anyways, Gordy Huncilman allowed us to be in the room when he gave his talk, and that was a real honor to get to hear him and hear what he had to say. And I'm thankful for that opportunity because I've done several of these deals, as I've said, and how emotional and important it is for the sellers, particularly in a family business. But to get to experience it firsthand was really impactful for me, and I think I'll carry that with me into the future. He got emotional, which I think is very natural, and he used the analogy that he said, next to giving my daughter away in marriage, this is the hardest thing I've ever done, and man, I get choked up just telling that story. It's really powerful, and it's an honor, and it's a big responsibility when you hear the guy that's put his whole life into that say that. You're like, shit. Yeah. Thanks a lot. No pressure. So
way to go, Gordy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, like, you guys were at that point where you've told the employees, you've had one-on-one conversations. What was it like when Nick's came in and started maybe just starting to change some things, whether it's, because
Before we get to that though, I think it's a great question, but I don't want to skip over. He mentioned the sitting the team members down, and we do that one-on-one. Two things I want to point out. One, we've learned along the way, like he said, you got to keep it really basic and get to the point. So we actually have a 1-page piece of paper for every team member. It's really like an offer letter, but down one column, it has Huncilman at the top. Here's all the comp and benefits as it was yesterday with Huntsman, and here's what it looks like today with Nix. And then there's side-by-side comparison. And then we come out on a third column and we show them the difference, positive or negative variance. And then it sums it all up at the very bottom. Here's the total, which you always hope that number's positive.
That's what I was going to say. Has it, in your experience, is it most of the time positive?
We tend to make it that.
I feel like you almost have to make it because
we tend to engineer it. Yes. So you start with what is just straight up, what is their common benefits, and what is ours just straight up side by side. But every person's a little bit different, just depending on, are they taking the health insurance or are they not taking the health? There's just variables. Yeah. Are they single? Do they have a family? So you just see how it nets out at the bottom. And we tend to try to architect so that no one goes backwards. And of course, some people come out bigger winners than others. It's just the way it works. But in general, we always want everybody to go forward. But just keeping it so simple for those folks and doing that. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is with the 15 or so Spanish-speaking folks we had, I'm very fortunate to have a very close friend. It's a first-generation immigrant. And of course, Spanish is his primary language, but speaks very fluid English. And he came as our interpreter. And I think that was so much better than just hiring a random interpreter because we had a personal relationship and he was able to speak to them. Yeah, I'm glad you noticed that too, because it broke the ice. I mean, he was cracking jokes and he just made it feel he was
saying, don't get under this guy's skin.
He was one of us. He's one of us, yep. And that's different than. So for some routine meetings we've had since then, we'll just bring a everyday interpreter in. But those first few days, having my friend Alfonso there, again, kind of friend of the family that can speak their language, I think went a long way. So those are just a couple things I wanted to point out.
Yeah, one thing that we learned too. I mean, it was feedback generally from employees. Was it was an exciting time, right? Everybody wants to be involved, and we were migrating employees essentially to the new business. We had too many people in the room. We learned that. It was people were overwhelmed. They felt like here's the new sheriff in town. And there's all these people sitting around the table telling me, it's going to be better. And, that in the future would have to change to more of a personal aspect and just, one-on-one conversation, and not be overbearing from that level. But that's absolutely one thing that I learned. And, that was transpired to everyone in the organization.
Hey guys, it's Nick from Making Chips, and I gotta tell you about our new show, Lights Out. When someone talks about being lights out, what comes to mind? For me, it's Michael Jordan, he's got the ball, the game's on the line, or it's Leo Messi taking that ball up to take a penalty in a penalty shootout. These guys are elite, and they're unstoppable, and you just know they're not gonna miss. But I also think about the technology, automation, process, and most importantly, the mindset of the manufacturing leaders with the best shops in the world. Every episode will equip and inspire you to run lights out so you can sleep soundly while your shop never stops. Because we all know, if you're not making chips, you're not making money. So check out the new Lights Out podcast by Making Chips. I will see you there.
I know I asked the question earlier, but something else I was thinking, again, I've gotten to experience a lot of Nix's mergers and acquisitions, and the ones that leave an impact on me, I'll give a shout. Like I think of like North End and now Huncilman. When I went in, so Matthew will send me to go do video, normally to help with the announcements, marketing, things like that. And I always find it fascinating when I go, whoa, these people align really well with the Knicks team members. Like when that the people are very, I like to say blue collar, but there is a culture. Like, does their culture mesh? And I felt like that was the same with Huncilman. When I went in there and I talked to when I got the tour with you, and then I went around. I don't know if you know this. Like I go around, I just talk to people for what I like to talk. So, but two, I also get this feeling. I'm like, I can see why this worked out. Was that like the culture, like not just obviously we talked about before the merger, but afterwards, could you feel that too? Or
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, again, this is probably pre deal, but you say the culture aspect and how that draws together, and you saw that at North End, you saw it at Huncilman. It's with the deal structure and who we were gonna get in business with. It's like I'm not gonna go get in business with a guy that's shopping for a 4-door Honda. I'm gonna get in business with a guy that shops for pickup trucks. And that's what Matthew does.
Hopefully there's no Honda drivers.
Yeah.
I don't have a
Shout out to Honda. We paint your parts. But, it has to be a fit, and he structured it that way. And that's essentially why we are where we are today. Yeah, they have the Ridgeline. I don't know that that's really a truck.
Kind of, almost a truck.
So back to the one, like, okay, now, what are, I forgot how did I word that first question? It was, basically, what were some of the small things that started happening that the team members maybe started noticing?
Well, one, you get somebody to be expected corporately, if we want to consider ourselves corporate.
Corporate.
Yeah, you have an individual placed with you, essentially my boss, who's Brandon, who's been phenomenal to work with. He works aligned with me from the aspect of crawl before you walk. So implementation of company policies, I know there's more to come. I know that, we're changing policies even while we're integrating policies. So number one, it's, we gave benefits with uniforms. Obviously, we progressed with what we can offer from a company as far as vacation benefits. I mean, we went from, having to spend a year with the company before you get 1 year or 1 week of vacation. And now it's instant. You sign on, you get that vacation, which I believe in is a great benefit. So policies, what policies you institute, and we're not fully integrated, and we won't be for, probably in a couple of years, truly. But looking at what has to happen to become a part of Nick's Industrial, number one, to say, yes, you're part of this, and not alienate yourself as that business. And how do you do that to make it a pleasant experience for the employees? That is key. And you have to crawl before you walk with that, because if you throw the book at them, they will walk. And we have a tremendous team behind Huncilman. And I take pride in that. And it's a portion of the business that I coddle. So implementation is key to that, and just doing it in small increments and increments to where they see a benefit from it.
Yeah.
I'll give an example of that. Sorry to interrupt, but Matthew does listening sessions with core components of the team at all business units, and he did our fabrication shop a listening session last week. And when I read the write-up of that, it was pretty eye-opening to positivity. There was very little negativity in it, and I thought, wow, if I would have done that a year ago, I would have been raked over the coals probably. So that was telling in itself as far as an implementation goes.
For people to realize that are listening, when you do that, you tell them, be honest. Like be. I just emailed you the other day and said, be brutally honest with me.
Yeah, I asked the question, what's not going well? What could we be doing differently? Like I asked them direct questions that they've got to answer, critical questions. But, on that integration stuff, I would just say that that's one thing that we've learned along the way. And Brandon, who's VP of Operations, which is who Parker reports to now, Brandon's been involved in every one of these deals. And we've learned to be really clear about what are the few things that are absolutely essential that we've got to get integrated, in that first 90. We really look at first week and first 90 days. Those are the key elements for us. And then first year. So, in that first 90 days, what do we have to make sure happens? And we got to get, in this case, Parker's got to be on board with that and really bought into, we're going to get these things accomplished. And then the balance of the things we can do in time, as long as there's progress being made. Like he said, we can't just ram it down everybody's throat, and people are going to, get uneasy about the change. And then I think in general, you want to change it as little as possible anyways. I mean, We're not trying to come in and change everything. It's just inevitably, and we try to communicate that to people. It's like, we're not going to come in and say nothing's going to change, because that'd be a lie.
Yeah.
We're going to change as few things as possible and as slowly as possible. But I promise you, things are going to change. It's just inevitable. We have to, because you're part of a bigger system and network now.
I mean, at its core, doing this is to change for the positive. I mean, otherwise we would have never done it.
Yeah. I mean, it can be simple things like, the folks on the E-coat line were wearing shorts. We don't allow shorts. We only do long pants, but we of course gave them all company issued uniforms. So that hopefully offset, people are like, oh, I gotta wear pants, and grumbling, but it's like,
there's a lot of play in the middle ground.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you were saying, like that you're doing this to accelerate growth or whatever it was. I guess my first question is, how far along are we now after the merger? If you guys can do the math real quick.
Well, September, October, November, December,
7
January,
months.
February. 7 months.
7 months. Okay. So in 7 months, what is something really cool that has happened that you're like whether was it cross-selling something that you guys didn't have the ability to do? Was there in 7 months? And you're gonna be like, there's nothing cool that's happened. No, I'm just kidding. But what's something that has happened that you're like,
well,
it's
the
a
word
good example of what happened.
Yeah, the word symmetry came up a lot, as far as, well, this shop can do that for you now and this and that, and we've found some opportunity with that. But right out of the gate, week 1, I sent a huge powder coating project down to our shop coatings division in Poseyville, and, got it back in a reasonable amount of time. And that checked that box immediately. So, this is absolutely going to work. I know I can't say 100% of the time I find solutions intra-company, and you don't want me to do that if it makes financial sense. But yeah, that was the cool part of it. It was like, wow, this has a tremendous upside. And then outside of that, I went from working with one outside sales individual. Now I have 8 essentially. So that, we found some great wins in that. We just won one yesterday. It was an enormous project that fits us to a T. So those are the big wins that you start to see. And, those fits make the employees, our team happy. They get the job in the shop that they want to build.
Yeah, I think I would probably echo that. The synergies that you hope to realize, we don't underwrite that into our deals too much, meaning when we try to do the financial analysis, we don't rely heavily on that. We bake some conservative number into that, but this has exceeded our expectations in terms of intra-company work that we used to outsource, that we're now trading work within our own shops, going both directions. Like Parker said, he used to have to go outside for powder coat, one of our sister shops, powder coats. We used to go outside for all laser cutting. Now Parker's shop does our laser cutting. And we have trucks running back and forth. So that's been valuable. And then, the sales, the cross-selling of the customer base has been tremendous. And this was one of the few instances where we've done acquisitions where there was a dedicated salesperson in place. So Huncilman had a full-time salesperson. He then joined our sales organization, which is a centralized function. They sell across the whole, and we've realized a lot of benefits out of that. So that's been really cool. One other story I want to share that's probably been one of the highlights for me, and it has absolutely nothing to do with Nick's or anything we've done, just really kind of shine the spotlight on Huncilman. It's been certainly a highlight. It just happened last week. So we've got a young man that was on the E-coat line. He's from Puerto Rico. He's one of the immigrants that's working for us. And, the E-coat hanging and unhanging is pretty low skilled work. It's the lowest paid job in the business. It's an entry level job. It's pretty physically demanding. I mean, you're just hanging and unhanging parts all day long. And we've got another gentleman that's a welder fabricator with us that actually took this young man kind of under his wing during his lunch break and before or after work and taught him how to weld. And he's now been promoted to a welder fabricator. And I mean, it's life-changing for him. And I visited with him a little bit last week when I was making my rounds, and he said, in his broken English, he's like, I'm happy. My wife is happy. My family is happy. Thank you so much. Just kept saying, thank you so much for the opportunity. And it was just so cool. I mean, we talked about that. I mean, literally is life-changing for this young man. And so, we're hopeful that we'll be able to keep him around and but those are the kind of opportunities. And again, we didn't really contribute anything to that, but I think just growth in general, those are the things that come from growth, is that growth creates those kinds of opportunities.
More jobs, more,
more opportunities to be promoted. And
Absolutely.
That's really that experience last week, it was reminding me, I'm like, man, that's what it's all about.
So you mentioned having too many people in the room on the one-on-ones. What are some other hiccups?
Well, we did. Let me rephrase. Yeah. We had one-on-ones, but we had too many.
Not one-on-one, but yeah.
Well, we did. I keep saying one-on-one. That's not right. We had one team member at a time, but there was too many folks from the company in there. So that's. I mistakenly said one-on-one, and I shouldn't have said that. But we would bring one team member in at a time and meet with them. But I was in there, Parker was in there, the head of HR was in there, Brandon was in there, and we all had a reason to be there. But
I'm the only one that knew the individual.
It was very overwhelming and intimidating.
One of those windows that
it was one-way glass.
No.
Now ask them this.
In all seriousness, that's something to think about. Is how do we? Maybe we videotape it so people can because you want to get to know that person, but it was intimidating. They had all these people around the table. And so, thanks for clarifying that. Yeah.
Well, and that's not really why I was bringing that up. I was just bringing it up to ask another question, which the question is what are other hiccups, or now's your time to give Matthew some advice?
Anybody. Yeah.
Anybody, I know.
To me, and this is going to be speaking to my job personally, we've kind of hit on the culture and what that change was like. But for me, I was given a playbook of this is what it looks like over the course of several years. There was no, and I get it. This was the first type of acquisition that you all had done, and my way towards you as well. But there was no, this is what to expect for you, Parker. So I instantly got thrown into, I don't want to say thrown into in a negative way, because it's been very positive. But several different meeting structures, those were structured weekly, monthly, and that wasn't really transpired to me as to what was going to be expected on that front. I meshed right into it, and it's very positive, but there was no definitive, this is what it's going to look like for you as a manager and partner in this business, outside of just continuing doing what you're doing. So,
that's great to know.
That's the only negative, but again, it's not a true negative.
And you're, like you said, like they haven't done it before, but now, like this is something, it's just like any processes. You got to document that kind of the simple things.
And it's unique from the respect too, because I guess don't call me your average manager per se, because I am on the senior leadership team too. So I have requirements within that and managing the business as well. So it's kind of twofold, but
that's good. And well, to be fair, this isn't the first time we've transitioned leadership, instantly like that to someone new. So we probably should develop a playbook for that. It's just been the first time we've had that person as a partner. So for example, several times now, the people that have sold us the company have stayed on and been retained as the site level leader, GM, whatever you want to call it, in a transition, whether that be 2 years, 3 years, whatever, in a transitional period, because they know that's essential for the transaction,
right?
Is to give us the time to get the new person. So even in that instance, it would be nice to have what you just described. Is like, here's all on one sheet of paper, all the true expectations as site leader in our organization.
Yeah, Matthew was
great feedback.
He was very upfront with me when we were going through this. He said, "Hey, if you want to meet with anybody that's gone through a transition with us, here are the folks that you can reach out to." And I did. I went to North End Gear and met with Dave Shope. Is it Shope?
Yep.
Yeah. And, I asked a bunch of questions to him, and one of which was, what's the reporting like? And, Dave was clear with me that he was put in that position to step up and GM essentially the role in that company. And he was begrudgingly saying, there's a lot of report. It was just something that he wasn't used to. But so I never really got that true. What was it actually going to look like, even from him?
I think it's pretty minimal reporting, but he was a shop floor guy. So.
Yeah, I know.
I would say for some people, though, it's actually good. Like when you integrate those reporting and stuff, it's actually a good thing. As in, like some companies maybe didn't have the accountability that Nick's require.
There's a healthy balance. There's a balance. You certainly can take it too far.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I don't know that I've ever told you this, but I went to North End Gear, and I had one decision in mind, and that was I was either going to say, okay, let's do it, or pull the plug that day. And I had one question to ask Dave, and that was, do they hold true to their commitments within reason? And he said, without question.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know you asked him that. That's really cool.
That's
And I sent him to Dave because I knew Dave wouldn't bullshit him.
Yeah, no, he doesn't.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's
awesome.
cool. Well, any other surprises you think as we wrap up here, Parker, that, are there any other hiccups you think we've had along the way?
Nothing to speak of that's impactful in any way. I mean, just day in, day out, driving a business, obviously you're going to hit those hiccups, but I'll say this, I think we're learning a lot of them together, and, there's going to be a lot of them to come, but none that I could speak of to the point to where they would be impactful in any way. So it's just been a positive experience overall.
Parker, thank you for coming on. I know you shared this story, like I said, you share it with me, you share it with other people, but now you're going to share it with millions of listeners. No, we don't have millions of listeners, but people will really.
We will now because I mentioned
because Parker.
I degraded Honda.
That's so. Yeah, exactly. But I do think the people listening, they're going to find a lot of value in these 2-part episodes from both of you. I mean, obviously, you guys brought 2 different perspectives, and most of the time it's been from a business trying to acquire. We've talked about that, like going out and growing your business, but it's kind of cool to hear it from the other side. So
Yeah, that was great. Really appreciate hearing your perspective on this. I think it'll be a interesting conversation. And Casey, I can bring the cliffhanger now to future episodes because you forgot to do a very important thing in 2 episodes now, which is your dad joke.
Yeah.
And we're running out of time today. So
I got a text message.
if you're a loyal listener and you like Casey's dad jokes, I apologize that we missed this episode. So come back next episode and you'll hear it. If you're a first-time listener, he's got a lot of crappy dad jokes. So come back next time.
Very, very.
And you'll hear
I have a
it.
whole book. My mother-in-law has bought me 2 books now, different dad jokes, because she knows I like dad jokes. So.
All right. So come back next episode. Please rate us, review us, share it. If you know anybody that would make a great guest, or you would be a great guest, reach out to us. That's how we find a lot of our guests. So
connect with us on LinkedIn. That's fun too.
Please. Yeah.
Parker, you already did this once, but if you're not making sparks,
You're not signing paychecks.
I
I changed it.
There you go.
You're not making money. That's right.